Okay, so just going to start off with the cos rule. We'll go over it. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so similar to the sine rule, the cos rule also lets us find unknown side lengths or angles of non-right angled triangles. So the cos rule looks at all sides and one angle. So basically, so long as we're missing one of those values, so either we're missing one side or we're missing one angle, we can find that, provided that we know the other two sides and an angle, or we know all three sides but we don't know an angle. So as you can see, the cos rule there is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cos c. So as you can see, it kind of looks somewhat like Pythagoras. You got your c squared equals a squared plus b squared. But then, considering it's not an actual right-angled triangle, we need to factor in the angle or the different angle. So it's no longer 90 degrees, so we have to factor that in. So that would be the rule. So I'll highlight it now. The top rule is the one that you would use to find an unknown side. So as you can see, we're finding unknown side C. And if we were to manipulate that, we can use it also down here, this version, to find an angle. So both of these formula are exactly the same. If you can only remember one, you can always find the other by just algebra or rearranging the equation. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So if I were to rearrange this equation to find my cosine for angles equation, basically what I've done is I've just brought this across by adding it to both sides. So we get c squared plus 2ab cos c gives us our a squared plus b squared. And then they have subtracted c squared from each side. So we're left with 2ab cos c gives us a squared plus b squared take c squared. So we're almost there. We just got one step left. And then we just need to get rid of this 2ab. And we apply the opposite. At the moment, it's times or multiplied. So we need to divide. And that's how we get our cos c equals a squared plus b squared take c squared divided by our 2ab. And as you can see, that formula is now exactly the same as that formula. So long as you remember the top formula, will probably be the most common. You can rearrange to either find the bottom formula, or you can still plug into the top formula. It's just you'll need to do a little bit more algebra or a little bit more steps of working to find the answer. So let's have a look at applying that formula in a question. So here I have a typical cos rule question. So as you can see, I'm dealing with all three sides of the triangle and one angle. And as you can see, the angle is opposite our c squared. So our first thing I always do is I always write our formula. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And don't worry, you'll pick it up in time. You'll get used to what the formula is and you just remember it, cos c. Same thing as always, I am going to plug in my values. I am assuming that this is angle C and that this is side C, because that just suits my formula. It doesn't really matter. So c squared is n squared, or c is n. A squared, again, it doesn't matter which one's which. So let's just say that's A, that's B. So 11.8 squared plus 9.3 squared. Take away 2 times A, which is 11.8, times B, which is 9.3, times, running out of space here, cos of C, which is our given angle. So 101 degrees, 45 minutes. Okay, as you notice, it is quite long, this formula. So at this point, I can basically plug that into my calculator. And I can get a value, or what I'd probably prefer to do is to get rid of this squared first by square root, or taking the root of each side. So essentially it's going to be long, but n equals the square root of all of what was on the right side. So 11.8 squared plus 9.3 squared, take 2 times 11.8 times 9.3 times cos of my angle, which was 101 degrees, 45 minutes. Okay, so that's an equation and a half if I've ever seen one. At this point, because I have all values filled in on the right, I can just simply plug that into my calculator. And so long as I do it correctly, I should be fine. So what I tend to do to make sure it does it correctly is I tend to put this in brackets, and then I'll also put this in brackets with the minus sign in the middle. So let's give that a go. Remembering when you're putting your degrees and your minutes in, make sure you're pressing the degrees, minutes, second button each time. I should get a value which is, let's say, closest to the nearest first decimal place, 14.6. And now there's no units on there, so that's fine. And last step I could do is just make sure that this makes sense. So if I plug 14.6 into here, does that make sense? Looking at the triangle, I'm trying to find the longest side. The other two sides are 11.8 and 9.3. So yes, 14.6 does make sense here. If I got something like 100 or over, then, you know, it's pretty safe to assume that you've probably done something wrong. So yeah, that's just a nice quick way to check, make sure you're on the right path. Okay, let's have a look at a second question. Now in this question, we're given all three sides, but we want to find the angle. So if we remember what the formula was for finding the angle version of the cos rule is, we can use that. Remember, we can always use the other version as well. It's just going to take a few more steps to work out. But since we've already done that other version, let's just refresh our memory. So this here is a formula I'm going to be using this time. So cos C equals etc. So again, first step, I'm going to write the formula. Cos C equals a squared plus b squared, take c squared over 2ab. And again, this is just something you'll pick up over time, and you should be able to remember it kind of off the top of your head. So again, whenever we're dealing with this formula, we assume that that angle's C, this is C, and the A and B sides doesn't actually matter because it's, yeah, A plus B is the same as B plus A. So let's just say that's A and that's B. Okay, again, I'm going to plug it into my formula. So cos of angle C, which we don't know, unknown, that's what I'm finding, equals A squared. So A is my 7.6. 7.6 squared plus my B value of 8.2 squared. Take C squared, so take 9.5 squared over 2 times A, which is 7.6, times B, which is 8.2. Okay, and one more step before I can put it into my calculator is I need to find my theta value, so I need to get rid of cos. And to do that, I take the inverse cos of both sides. So what I'm going to put in my calculator is cos inverse of what my fraction was, which was my 7.6 squared plus 8.2 squared, take 9.5 squared. Yep, and I should be able to plug that in. Again, just my kind of thing I do just to make sure is I just put the top and the bottom in brackets as I'm putting it in the calculator, so we're not getting any order of operations done incorrectly. Okay, has anyone else put this in their calculator and did they get 1 degree? Okay, so I'm getting my decimal value, so I'm going to press my degrees, minutes, second button, and that converts it to degrees in minutes. So I'd assume this angle is 1 degree, 17 minutes. And that is the end of the Cos rule explanation. We'll move on to area of a triangle in a second. So let me just stop the recording and we'll move on to that now.